And thank you for staying with us. 4 American service members have now been killed in action amid ongoing operations against Iran. Israel widens its campaign with new airstrikes on Hezbollah targets across Lebanon. And War Secretary Pete Hegseth says it won't be an endless war. And oil and natural gas prices surge. Today is Monday, March 2nd. You're watching NTD's special coverage of the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran. I'm Kevin Hogan. The Secretary of War briefed reporters on the Operation Epic Fury, which he describes as the most lethal, complex, and precise aerial operation in history. NTD's Melina Wisecup has a recap for us.
3 days after the U.S. launched its initial strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has a message for service members.
We face a determined enemy, but you are better. But we must prove it every single day. History doesn't care if we're tired, if we're scared, or if the fight feels big. It demands warriors who rise anyway.
Iran has carried out several retaliatory strikes, and 4 U.S. service members are confirmed to have died since the start of Operation Epic Fury.
I want to express my deep condolences and the condolences of the Joint Force to the Department of War personnel killed and wounded in actions thus far. As the Secretary said, they're heroes and represent the best of our nation has to offer.
President Trump gave the order to strike Iran after it refused to eliminate its nuclear capabilities.
Iran had a conventional gun to our head as they tried to lie their way to a nuclear bomb.
Hegseth emphasized that the president tried to reach a diplomatic solution. Months of effort at diplomacy failed to bear fruit.
When diplomacy fails and they don't respond to nice letters and what our actual demands are, you have to be prepared with the buildup that we have to make these key precision strikes to eliminate the key individuals and return Iran back to the people as it was 47 years ago.
While Pentagon officials say the goal of the war is not regime change, the world is better off for what has been accomplished in the Middle East. President Trump has urged Iranians to seize the day.
Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass.
It's unclear how long the conflict will go on. Pentagon officials declined to state the timeline or specifics of tactics to avoid tipping off the enemy. Secretary Hegseth insisted the war will end on America First terms.
This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. We will finish this on America First conditions of President Trump's choosing. Nobody else's, as it should be.
While there are no U.S. boots on the ground in Iran right now, additional U.S. forces continue to flow into the Middle East as major combat operations against Iran intensify. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
The latest developments in Operation Epic Fury: 3 U.S. fighter jets were mistakenly shot down over Kuwait in what officials are calling a friendly fire incident as combat operations against Iran intensify. We go live to NTD's Washington correspondent, Jack Bradley. Jack, what exactly happened and how are officials responding?
All right, so Pentagon officials say that the 3 F-15s were flying in support of Operation Epic Fury when they were mistakenly shot down in Kuwait by their air defense systems during active combat. We know that the region's under heavy assault at the time with Iranian aircraft, ballistic missiles, and drones all in the air. Now, the Kuwaiti forces had misidentified those American jets as threats, and all 6 crew members ejected safely. Officials are investigating this, and Kuwait is a key U.S. partner hosting U.S. bases. Meanwhile, CENTCOM, Central Command, confirmed that the 4th service member has died from injuries sustained during Iran's retaliatory missiles and drone strikes. Officials say that 1 Iranian missile slipped through the U.S. air defenses and then struck an operations center. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, says that major combat operations are ongoing and cautioned that additional American losses are possible. Take a look.
This is not a single overnight operation. The military objectives that CENTCOM and the Joint Force have been tasked with will take some time to achieve, and in some cases will be difficult and gritty work. We expect to take additional losses. And as always, we will work to minimize U.S. losses.
Now, he emphasized that hundreds of missions have already been carried out so far and delivering tens of thousands of explosives as the U.S. is working to dismantle Iran's missile, drone, and naval capabilities and take out what's left of the regime. And to anyone helping Iran, General Kane says this. Watch.
To those who would test our resolve or threaten the United States, our allies, or our interests, understand clearly we can reach you, we can sustain the fight, and we can scale the fight, and we will prevail.
And there's more updates and developments expected throughout the day, Kevin, but we do know that Trump has said that 10 Iranian ships have been taken down thus far by U.S. and Israeli forces.
Well, Jack, luckily those pilots were able to eject, as we saw there and as you were reporting on. Now, as this conflict enters its third day, are we seeing an expansion of U.S. involvement in the region, and how is Israel responding?
We are. The Pentagon is confirming additional U.S. forces that are flowing into the Middle East as operations scale up here. Naval, air assets are being reinforced under the command structure that's overseeing what they're calling the theater. Now, while here, there are currently no boots on the ground. It's all naval and air. But Secretary of War Pete Hegseth didn't rule that out in the future. He also says that this isn't a repeat of Iraq, calling it a focused and decisive mission aimed at eliminating Iran's missile and nuclear threat. But beyond Iran, the conflict's spreading to the north. We have Hezbollah in Lebanon launching attacks toward northern Israel, prompting Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon overnight. Take a look.
Overnight, the IDF carried out retaliatory strikes against several Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, including command and control centers, launch sites, and senior terrorists. We were ready for this. As part of the preparations for our operation in Iran, the IDF prepared for an attack from Hezbollah, allowing us to carry out a swift response.
And at the time, Lebanon's government has now moved to ban Hezbollah military activity, signaling rising pressure as these tensions escalate. Kevin.
Yes, well, thank you for that update, Jack. And we're trying to bring you up a live shot of Jerusalem. And when we come back, President Trump presents medals of honor to 3 U.S. Army soldiers. What he says about the operations in Iran in a moment. Welcome back to our live special coverage on the breaking situation in Iran. I'm Kevin Hogan. President Trump says he ordered the attack on Iran to thwart Tehran's nuclear development and ballistic missile program. Here's the president speaking at the White House.
Today, the United States military continues to carry out large-scale combat operations in Iran to eliminate the grave threats posed to America by this terrible terrorist regime. Following our obliteration of Iran's nuclear program in Operation Midnight Hammer a short while ago, we warned Iran not to make any attempt to rebuild at a different location because they were unable to use the ones that we so powerfully blew up. But they ignored those warnings and refused to cease their pursuit of nuclear weapons. In addition, the regime's conventional ballistic missile program was growing rapidly and dramatically, and this posed a very clear, colossal threat to America and our forces stationed overseas. The regime already had missiles capable of hitting Europe and our bases, both local and overseas, and would soon have had missiles capable of reaching our beautiful America.
The president made the comments while awarding the Medal of Honor to 3 U.S. Army soldiers. Trump also addressed the timeline for continued operations, saying the U.S. is ahead of schedule and that the original projection was 4 to 5 weeks. He said the U.S. has the capability to continue far longer if needed, while adding that the military has knocked out 10 Iranian ships.
This was our last best chance to strike what we're doing right now and eliminate the intolerable threats posed by this sick and sinister regime. And they are indeed sick and sinister. Our objectives are clear. First, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities, and you see that happening on an hourly basis, and their capacity to produce brand new ones, and pretty good ones they make. Second, we're annihilating their navy. We've knocked out already 10 ships. They're at the bottom of the sea. Third, we're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon.
President Trump says the most intense strikes against Iran have yet to come. Trump telling CNN, quote, "We haven't started hitting them hard. The big wave hasn't even happened. The big one is coming soon." Trump says he expects strikes against Iran to last 4 to 5 weeks, adding that the operation is ahead of schedule. He also says it's unclear who will succeed Ayatollah Khamenei after a strike killed the Iranian leader over the weekend. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates said Iran has launched more than 170 ballistic missiles toward the country since the start of the conflict. The country's defense ministry said it had destroyed 161 of the missiles and intercepted several hundred Iranian drones. The ministry condemned the attacks, calling them a flagrant violation of its national sovereignty and international law. UAE officials said 3 people had been killed, while 68 suffered minor injuries. Qatar said its Air Force had shot down 2 Iranian bombers and intercepted 9 ballistic missiles. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is targeting tyrants. He was at the site of an Iranian missile strike west of Jerusalem earlier today. Here he is drawing a contrast between Israel and Iran after yesterday's attack killed 9 people.
This is the 3rd day of the Operation Roaring Lion, the operation the Israeli army and the state of Israel set out to, with our great friends, the United States of America and President Trump, to thwart existential threats to Israel and great threats to America and the entire world. When I stand here in a place that was bombarded by the terrorists in Tehran against innocent civilians, you see the difference. The tyrants of Tehran target civilians. We target the tyrants of Tehran to protect civilians.
Netanyahu adding that a nuclear-armed Iran would pose a threat to the entire world. The war in the Middle East continues as the Israeli and U.S. bombing campaign against Iran intensifies. Iran and its allies are targeting locations in Israel and neighboring Gulf states. Iran has long threatened to expand the conflict into a regional war if attacks continued. And this morning, the EU Commission president spoke about the ongoing conflict, calling the latest developments concerning, but saying there is now hope for the oppressed people of Iran.
There is a renewed hope for the oppressed people of Iran, and we strongly support their right to determine their own future. And I condemn in the strongest terms these reckless and indiscriminate attacks by Iran and its proxies against sovereign territories across the region.
The European Commission president says that only a diplomatic solution will last. She says stability will only come after a credible transition, and if Iran stops its nuclear and ballistic programs. France says it stands ready to defend its partners in the Middle East against Iran's retaliation. This week, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz will be the first European leader to meet Trump since the start of the operation. Speaking on the initial U.S. strikes against Iran, the Chancellor said, "Despite all the doubts, we share many of their aims." French President Emmanuel Macron says his country will expand its nuclear arsenal. Macron said France would revise its nuclear doctrine while speaking at a submarine base on the nation's Atlantic coast.
I have ordered an increase in the number of nuclear warheads in our arsenal. To put an end to any speculation, we will no longer communicate on the figures of our nuclear arsenal, contrary to what may have been the case in the past. To be free, therefore, one must be feared. And to be feared, one must be powerful. This increase in our arsenal attests to this.
Macron said Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Denmark would be able to take part in French nuclear war games. The French president added the possibility of establishing strategic assets in other European countries, part of what he called a new forward deterrence doctrine. France and Britain are both nuclear powers, but most European countries rely on the United States' nuclear umbrella for deterring any potential attack. Meanwhile, France's foreign minister said the country was ready to assist Gulf nations targeted by Iranian retaliatory strikes, adding that initial U.S. strikes against Iran should have been debated beforehand at the United Nations. The Director General of the UN's nuclear watchdog says there's no indication that Iran's nuclear sites have been damaged amid U.S.-Israeli strikes. He says contact with Iranian officials has been limited.
We stand by what I said before. We haven't seen major military activity targeting the nuclear facilities. We have been looking at different satellite images. There might be something there, but not significant or comparable in any way to what we saw last time.
Iran's ambassador to the agency disputed the assessment, claiming a nuclear facility in Natanz had been attacked. Natanz housed 2 uranium enrichment plants that the U.S. bombed in June. The UN nuclear agency said at the time that an above-ground facility was destroyed and one underground was badly damaged. Iran has denied agency inspectors access to its nuclear sites that the U.S. targeted last summer. Volodymyr Zelenskyy says U.S.-led talks with Russia are expected later this week. The Ukrainian president said discussions may take place in Switzerland or Turkey if a planned meeting in Abu Dhabi isn't possible. U.S.-brokered peace negotiations to end the war between Russia and Ukraine are continuing. However, the ongoing conflict with Iran may force a change of location for the next round of talks. Previous Russia-Ukraine negotiations have been held in Abu Dhabi, Istanbul, and Geneva. Zelenskyy said there has been no immediate change in American and European supplies of air defense weapons, but he added that shipments could become limited if U.S. strikes continue against Iran. Thank you for tuning in to our special live coverage of the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. We'll have more coverage in the next hour. I'm Kevin Hogan. Stay tuned.